Now this leads me, has led me always, or for a long time, to the following method. I ask first the human questions. For instance, as we did shortly before, the question of anxiety, or the question of guilt, the question of doubt, of meaninglessness, all these human questions. And then I try to show how these human questions are answered by the religious symbols. For instance, as a Christian theologian, I would say by the Christian symbols, God, the Christ, and the others. Now this I call the method of correlation. Here the human questions, here the religious symbols. And to understand these symbols, you must relate them to the human questions. Otherwise they are ununderstandable. I often say to ministers and theologians, don't throw stones at the heads of people, but try to make understandable to them what you say. If you throw your dogmas and doctrines like stones at them, they will turn away. They cannot take them. But if you make understandable what these symbols mean, then they will see suddenly, this is not all nonsense, that's not all unbelievable tradition, but that's something which concerns them directly. Now that's what I mean with the method of correlation.
Would you think that this is particularly a Protestant way of approaching it?
Yes, now that brings us to another point, a very important point too. You see, usually, and in some church traditions, the religious symbols and the doctrinal form in which they are given in instruction of children and in preaching and everywhere are supposed to be the immovable divine revelation which simply has to be taken as it is. This, of course, is mostly expressed in the Roman Catholic Church, where we have statements which are called by faith, which everybody has to accept, and where no theologian is allowed to deviate or to change what is given in the official doctrine of the Church. Now, as a Protestant theologian, I cannot accept that method. I have a very high valuation of the tradition. As you know, some people call me much too conservative. But nevertheless, I never would feel to be bound to them in such a way that I simply have to repeat them and to accept them as eternal truths. They are human expressions of the eternal, but they are not eternal themselves. And that's what I call the Protestant principle. Nothing what human beings do, not even the Protestant churches do, not even the Bible does, is in itself eternal. Eternal, I would say as a theologian, is God alone. And in the moment in which his revelation comes into human minds and hearts and hands, it is changed in a human way. And it cannot be taken as a final and ultimate form. There is a continuous change of expression of some symbols and of theological inquiry into the meaning of these symbols. Now that's my Protestant point of view, so I feel free in my inquiries into the meaning of the Christian symbols to deal with the tradition of all churches, including the Protestant churches, in a way which is determined by the ultimate concern of Christianity on the one hand, and by the needs of the human beings today on the other hand.
This, of course, makes you much freer in relationship to the other sciences.
Certainly. You see, if you define faith as belief in something more or less believable, then you are continuously in conflict with history, with natural science, with psychology, with everything. Mm-hmm. In the moment in which you say that faith is being ultimately concerned and that the religious expressions are symbols, then there's no interference of science with religion and of religion with science. They are in two different dimensions. Science is in the dimension of describing this reality in all its relations to each other. Religion points to the dimension of the ultimate. And in this way, there is no possible conflict if this is seen in a clear way. I think this is one of the greatest advantages of the method of correlation and the Protestant principle.
All right. The method of correlation gives the analysis of the human situation, but what about the Christian answer?
Now, as I believe you know, answers are always more difficult than questions. But I will try to give you a kind of summary of what I think in terms of my method of correlation and my Protestant principle about the Christian symbols. Now, I believe that Christianity has made it very clear that the human situation is a situation of estrangement of man from himself, from what he should be and essentially is. Therefore, the answer only could be, how can this estrangement be overcome? And the way in which it can be overcome is, as I would say, the appearance of a new reality, of a reality in which these splits and estrangements, these anxieties and guilt feelings are overcome. I call this the new being, which means a new reality, a new state of things, not the state of estrangement and of anxiety, but as I would like to call it, the state of a courageous affirmation of our life in spite of all the shortcomings and estrangements. And in this way, I make this word, the new being, the center of my theology. And as a Christian theologian, I believe that this new being is most visible and centrally visible in the picture of Jesus as the Christ in the New Testament. But that answer needs again much more explanation, and very soon we will be in the lecture and I will speak just about this point. Oh, it's time. Do you hear the bell ringing? Yes, I have to run down to the lecture room. Will you come with me? As in good old times?
The National Broadcasting Company has presented a conversation with Dr. Paul Tillich, prominent Protestant theologian, now university professor at Harvard. With Dr. Tillich was Werner Rode.